I would like to welcome all of you to today's edition of our ongoing Rizalian lecture series. This series is sponsored by the Knights of Rizal Aloha chapter in line with the order's primary purpose, which is to spread knowledge about the life, works, and ideas of our national hero, Dr. Jose Rizal. Um, I now would like to call on Sir Dr. Raymond Leongson, Area Commander for Hawaii, to introduce our guest speaker. Sir Raymond, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. One question. What do you get when you put together beauty, brains, historic ancestry, and eloquence?
Uy, kakagaling naman
Ah,
yan.
okay. You would get unmistakably a Gemma Teresa Guerrero Cruz Araneta. Yeah. Gemma is well known not only in the Philippines but widely, even globally. She is a Filipino, they say politician, although
Ay, hindi ako
I know and
kumain.
recognize her more as a writer, a director, a beauty queen who won back in 1964 the title of Miss International. And she was the first Filipina and Asian to win that title. She received an outstanding Manilenia and Golden Heart Award from the president, Diosdado Macapagal back then. And Gemma is the grandniece of Rizal. There is the historic ancestry I was referring to through Rizal's or Jose Rizal's sister, Maria. Yeah. Gemma is the daughter of a well-known journalist. Many of us still remember her name, um, Carmen Guerrero Nakpil, by her first husband, Captain Ismael Argelas Cruz, who was the grandson of Maria Rizal through her first son, Mauricio. So without taking much more time, as he requested, make it short and sweet, I would like to present to you and we're very, very fortunate, Knights of Rizal, and all the audience who will be with us this afternoon and morning, probably there in Manila, to have our speaker, the very grandniece of Dr. Jose Rizal, Gemma Cruz-Araneta. Gemma?
Thank you very much, Mr. Leongson, for that very kind introduction. Well, to begin this, I don't want to call it a lecture, maybe a tertulia, a conversation with you.
Mhm.
Um, I would like you to know that I have always been very deeply interested in La Liga Filipina, and I'm going to talk about that today. I have researched about the Liga for many years, and I have often written about it. And because I noticed that in schools, the most of the professors just gloss over the La Liga Filipina, maybe because it was short-lived, and very few have been able to connect it with the exile of Rizal in Dapitan. Now, let me and many of the Filipinos know Rizal as a writer. No, as a writer, he left volumes and volumes of letters, articles, scientific ones, translations. But very few, I think, know him as an organizer. So let me read an excerpt of a letter written to Jose Rizal by one of his companions in Europe, by a certain Mr. Seferino de Leon. So here is the excerpt. Nothing new here, and we do not see much of each other. You can imagine how aloof we have become, each one going to wherever the wind blows him. Since you left, big groups no longer congregate. It seems that a strong hurricane of egoism has shattered the harmonious relation that was evident among our countrymen. Today, There are no more tertulias like we had before, when friends would meet in whatever place to share and exchange impressions, if at all. There are a few groups that are the source of unjust rumors. Others hurl complaints at one another. As a result, good relations are dampened. The Filipino colony needs something that can remedy the situation. In that context, I can assure you that your absence caused the malady. So, what does that letter tell us? That Rizal was also an organizer, no? Aside from being a writer. That rather despondent letter, which was written on the 2nd of March in 1886 by Severino de Leon, tells us that Rizal, who was who is often portrayed as a stand-alone patriot, elegant in that black winter coat, brooding, writing seditious novels, studying continuously, reading voraciously till the dead of night, beguiling women with his charming conversation, unrivaled at making contemporary speeches, patient with the afflicted and the sick, etc. But judging from that letter of Severino de Leon, Rizal must have been a sagacious coalition builder who ably united the multifarious Filipino community in Madrid. No? Now we know that he also had the talent of organizing people, uniting them under one ultimate objective, which was to build a strong and progressive nation. So no wonder Rizal had to be eliminated. I hope you agree with my analysis. So, when Rizal returned to his native land in 1892, he founded La Liga Filipina on July 3 at a friend's house in Tondo, Manila. Definitely, it was not a secret society, as he had already discussed it openly with compatriots in Hong Kong, and upon arrival had taken the train to Bulacan and Tarlac to recruit members who believed in La Liga's lofty goals. And these are the goals: to unite the Philippine archipelago into one compact nation, to instill among Filipinos a spirit of mutual aid and protection against violence and injustice, and to promote education, foment agriculture, and commerce. Rizal welcomed people from all walks of life to the La Liga Filipina, and according to records, among the first to sign up were Andres Bonifacio, Deodato Arellano, Diwa, Ariston Bautista, Domingo Franco. However, Rizal's startling change of vocation from writer to organizer must have alarmed the Spanish colonial government. That was why, after 4 days, Rizal was arrested and banished instantly to the inaccessible hinterlands of Dapitan. He arrived by boat in the late evening when darkness was dense and primeval. How depressing it must have been for one who was accustomed to the sparkling cafes of Paris, Madrid, and Manila. Yet Rizal fanned his optimism. He wrote, "I am determined to do everything I can for this town." So admirably, Rizal converted his inconvenient exile into a splendid opportunity to implement the goals of La Liga Filipina. He began with the most basic need: water. There was no potable water supply to speak of. So this Ilustrado built one almost from scratch with his bare hands. He was not an engineer, but he was a land surveyor. So he designed an ingenious 2-kilometer water system. Today, there are remains of that incredible double clay handmade piping, which tapped a natural spring on top of a mountain through which water flowed down to Barrio Talisay. It spouted out of a charming lion's head, very much like those small street fountains Rizal must have seen in Europe. And I think Dr. George Asinero and Dr. Floro Kibuyen have a project to restore um, the water system that Rizal made. It was so amazing that when the U.S. Engineering Corps went to the Pitan during the Philippine-American War, they marveled at the water supply system, which was still functioning then. But they failed to acknowledge that the maker of such a remarkable piece of work was Jose Rizal. They had not discovered Jose Rizal yet. As La Liga Filipina aimed to promote quality education, Rizal opened a school in Dapitan where young boys were molded into men of character, imbued with a deep love for country. I think Rizal wanted to show us how to build a progressive community from scratch, which, if replicated all over the archipelago, could eventually consolidate a strong Filipino nation. As you all know, in the wake of the Philippine Revolution, academies, institutes, study centers mushroomed all over the country, guided by the principles of patriotism, honor, science, liberty, and progress. Many of these schools reflected Jose Rizal's perspective of modern education, the Colegio Moderno, where young Filipinos could learn critical analysis, how to think for themselves instead of being spoon fed or taught by rote and memorization. More importantly, Rizal's Colegio Moderno aimed to instill a sense of nationhood, which he called Sentimiento Nacional, in the heads and minds of future generations of Filipinos. In his writings, Rizal said that the Filipino must strive for perfection through an education that is patriotic, scientific, civic spirited, intellectually inquisitive, and available to all social, ethnic, and racial groups. I hope Sara Duterte is listening. Now, when he was in Dapitan, the Jesuit order sent his former professor, Father Francisco Sanchez, to maybe to make sure that he returns to the fold. So Rizal must have been very elated because his former professor arrived with a trunk full of books, which I'm sure he was so intellectually starved by then, he must have devoured all those books. Aside from the books, Father Sanchez brought with him surveying equipment because, with the help of Rizal, he intended to make topographical maps of Dapitan and the other towns around it. So Rizal was a licensed agrimensor and perito tasador de tierras, meaning land surveyor and assessor. So, and the Spanish governor of Dapitan was only too happy to approve this Rizal Sanchez proposal. And it included the landscaping of the plaza and the placement of waterworks and lighting wherever they were necessary. Now, the original plan to make a relief map of the entire archipelago in front of the church plaza was not just a beautification project, for the good of the church. Sanchez and Rizal wanted the people of the Pitan and the other towns around it to be aware of the topography of Mindanao. So it wasn't a flat, uh, a flat map. And they they made sure that all the mountains and the valleys and the lakes of Mindanao were included in that relief map. However, unfortunately, after about a year, Father Sanchez was abruptly recalled to Manila by his Jesuit superiors. That was such a cruel blow to Jose Rizal because he lost a friend, a fellow scientist, and an intellectual ally. So he gave Father Sanchez an emotive departure with a band of young musicians, and he released the balloon as the boat was sailing away. Well, Rizal was probably too despondent by the departure of Sanchez that he did not continue the map, the relief map of the Philippines. Only the map of Mindanao was finished, and to this day, I think it is still there in front of in front of the church. But I noticed when I saw it, it no longer had this topographical, original topographical design of Jose Rizal. Now, not many of us know that with the encouragement of Father Sanchez, his former professor, Rizal came upon with a pasta made of bacao, of a kind of mangrove, bakawan, which he believed could very well be used as construction material suitable to this tropical climate. Noting Rizal's interest in that mangrove species, Father Sanchez left him a book written by a Jesuit titled Historia de Filipinas, where this Jesuit, Juan Jose Delgado, described that local carpenters make a pasty substance with a bacao fruit and use this to fill in and smoothen the imperfections of wood. Intrigued by what he read, Rizal began to experiment with the bacao to see if it could become hard enough to carve and mold particular shapes. So I think that sculpture of a dog attacking a crocodile, entitled The Mother's Revenge, was made of this material. Although a lot of people think it was made of clay, I think it was made of bacao. The result also carved frames and fashioned tiles, proving that the bacao paste had three properties that made it ideal for roofing. It is water resistant, fireproof, and very light in weight. So I don't know why the people in Dapitan never continued that project of the bacao. Anyway, another project that Rizal made in Dapitan was a game book, a question and answer book called Hack S. Sibila Kumana. This he made for his students. No, he devised this in 1895, and to make it more intriguing, he named it Sibila, who was a sorceress from ancient Cumae. I think that was part of Greece, and mentioned in the poems of Ovid. Rizal always showed how things historical can be used to add flavor to contemporary concerns. When he was making this game book, he also showed us that it is valuable to recycle materials and not to waste them. So, this book, this game book, contains lessons about the resourceful use of materials, quality control, discipline, and manual and intellectual work, which were good habits that Jose Rizal believed essential. As it turns out, our national hero was a trailblazer in recycling. Now, the cover of the book was made by Rizal from an old Manila envelope that came from the United States. I think he wrote to a company there asking about machines. He wanted to buy some machines, maybe a pump for the water system, I don't know. But he kept that big manila envelope. First, he tried to make the family tree of the Rizals, but he abandoned that project, but he didn't throw away the paper. So he used it as the cover of his game book, Sibila Humana. And do you know that each page of that book was made of papel de Japón? You know, this onion skin paper, papel de Japón, we used to call it. But to make the pages thicker and so that the ink will not blot, he pasted very carefully two pieces of papel de Japón to make it thicker. And then the corners of the book, including the cover, were very well cut and rounded. And he also bound the book. So I can just imagine how many hours it must have cost him to produce Sibila Kumana for his students. It had 52 questions. You can ask Sibila, and she has multiple answers for each question. Rizal showed his pupils, for whom the game was made, that with optimism, a sense of humor, and of course the proper values, one can face life and its major challenges. Perhaps unwittingly, Rizal revealed his funny side, his naughty side. He was indeed a delightfully human person. Now, more than 150 years after he was born, I think Jose Rizal remains to be the object of incessant dispute. His writings have not been fully decoded nor analyzed as years have gone by. But scholars like Loro Kibuyan, who is a knight of Rizal, and Jorge Aseñero, who I think is also a knight of Rizal, have written and tried to analyze for us the works of Rizal. So, Dr. Kibuyan concludes that by exiling Rizal to primeval Dapitan, the Spanish colonial state believed, I quote, they were punishing and isolating a recalcitrant subversive because he was a European educated polymath and at 31 years of age, already an accomplished man of science and letters and adored by his compatriots. He was considered a dangerous and formidable enemy of church and state. Mindanao was a special preserve of the Jesuits. Under the watchful eyes of his former mentors, Rizal was expected to return to the fold. But Dr. Kibuyan said that did not happen. Rizal ended up transforming his adopted town towards his radical vision of human development and social justice, and thus resolving the urgent question of how Filipinos should live and relate to each other, and what sort of nation we should aspire to be. So, Dr. Kibuyan says that when Rizal wrote El Filibusterismo, he himself did not know the answer to what the Filipino nation should be like. Dr. Kibuyan says, when the disconsolate Simon pressed Father Florentino for an answer, all that good priest could say was a disappointing suffer and wait. But 2 years after writing the El Filibusterismo, Rizal had already figured it out. He founded the La Liga Filipina to unite the whole archipelago into one compact, vigorous, and homogeneous body, to advocate mutual protection in all cases of trouble and need, to teach Filipinos to defend themselves and each other against violence and injustice, and to foment commerce, agriculture, and education. Floro said that was Rizal's blueprint of a free and independent nation. Also, according to Dr. Kibuyan, The Spanish regime correctly saw Rizal's project as a movement towards an independent nation, and thus promptly arrested and exiled him to Dapitan in 1892. But this event proved to be a blessing in disguise, for it was in Dapitan that Rizal finally realized and put into practice the solution of the problem posed by Simon in Il Filibusterismo. In Dapitan, Rizal realized that the best way, if not the only way, is to work with the people using local resources and responding to local needs. That was Rizal's vision, the master plan for a strong, compassionate, progressive, and patriotic Filipino nation. So let us put that into practice instead of copying what other countries do. What are we waiting for? Any questions so far? Please react.
Please proceed.
Please react, Mr. Colmenares.
I'll react later on.
Okay. So, in those bitter colonial days, the Filipino masses compare their pitiful existence to the passion of Christ, and through him, they hope for redemption. That's the thesis of Dr. Kibuyen and also Dr. Ray Ileto. So Dr. Kibuyen explains that Rizal's mythical figure became the symbol of resistance, the central dramatis persona in the nation's revolutionary narrative against the abusive Spanish colonial rule and also the brutal imposition of American colonialism. Dr. Kibuyen elucidates. During the Filipino resistance against American forces, Rizal's name as Kristong Pilipino was always invoked by rebels and so-called bandits who refused to submit to the American yoke. Today, these popular traditions are kept alive by Rizalista cults, many from Mount Banahaw, who marched to the Rizal monument on the anniversaries of his birth and martyrdom. Curiously enough, wrote Dr. Kibuyen, while the Ilustrados were ponderously defining the nation for the benefit of the masses were unilaterally appropriating the most famous Ilustrado, Jose Rizal, as their very own symbol. This process of appreciation was going on even before the Americans arrived, affirms Dr. Kibuyan in his book, The Nation Aborted. Another Filipino historian, Dr. Ray Ileto, expounded that Rizal mode of death unfailingly moved the masses. Having died like Christ, it was widely believed that Jose Rizal arose from the dead and was hidden in some sacred mountain or embodied in a person of unusual powers. Dr. Ileto said that was why all peasant rebel leaders, to as late as 1920, always claimed to be the resurrected Rizal, or at least his chosen emissary. As we all know, during the Malolos Congress, Bishop Gregorio Aglipay of the Philippine Independent Church and Isabelo de los Reyes, a friend of Jose Rizal, were urging the members of the Congress to sever ties with the Vatican and to proclaim Jose Rizal a saint of the First Philippine Republic. Apolinario Mabini, whom we call the brains of the Philippine Revolution, must have worshipped Jose Rizal because in the chapter 6 of his book, Revolucion Filipina, there is an insightful commentary of Rizal's novels. Mabini wrote that Rizal gave two pieces of advice which might serve as warnings not only to the Spaniards but also to the Filipinos. By the first, he served notice on the Spaniards that if the Spanish government, in order to please the friar, remained deaf to the demands of the Filipino people, the latter would have recourse in desperation to violent means and seek in independence relief for its sorrows. Rizal's warning came to pass. Now, while writing about the Philippine Revolution, Mabini decoded Rizal's salient message to us, to the Filipinos. Jose Rizal's stern warning to his countrymen was grasped by Mabini, who underscored the message. If they should take up their country's cause, motivated by personal hatred and ambition, they would, far from helping it, only make it suffer all the more. Indeed, the philosophy of Rizal was dramatized by the characters of Ibarra/Simon vis-a-vis Elias. Through them, Rizal showed that only those actions dictated by true patriotism would benefit the Filipino. But such audacious actions demand the sacrifice to the common good and, above all, require disinterestedness and abnegation like Elias. So Mabini asks, did the Spaniards know how to profit from this advice to them, or the Filipinos by that advice given to them? So, parang hindi, ano. So 4 years after Rizal was arrested and exiled to the Pitan, the Cuerpo de Vigilancia, which was like an intelligence agency, like the NICA that we used to have, or I don't know, maybe it still exists. So the Cuerpo de Vigilancia was still assiduously filing reports about La Liga Filipina, even if Rizal was already in exile. So they had agents, they paid agents to go all around, snooping around, just what red tagging is, no? So that was the red tagging of those days. And they made lists, long lists, which included the names of Jose Rizal Mercado, whom they described as a periodista, Eduardo Lete, whom they described as a law student, Ricardo Regidor, uh, employee of the telegraph company, Antonio Luna, whose nom de guerre was Tagailog, described as a pharmacist, Miguel Moraita, lawyer, Pasiano Rizal Mercado, agriculturalist, and Andres Bonifacio, who was working in the commercial sector, and Jose Basa. And so they listed names of famous Filipinos like Isabelo de los Reyes, Jose Silos, the musician, Antonio Solis, professor of the Ateneo de Manila, Antonio Rojas, a very rich ilustrado. But according to the reports would always say, according to reliable information, no? Because the agents didn't really have means to verify. According to reliable information, Jose Rizal was supposed to be the source of all separatist propaganda. He was already in the Pitan, but they said he was supposed to be the source of all separatist propaganda and continued to receive all information on the negotiations being done by the Philippine Commission in Japan. And he was being consulted about everything. He was already in Dapitan. That there were many persons going and coming from Dapitan in the mail boats. That was what the agent said. But by then, Rizal had one foot in the grave. But his La Liga Filipina was becoming a revenant, destined to prevail and continue to haunt the Spanish colonial government. The end.
Well, thank you very much, Gemma, for that very interesting talk.
Thank you,
Um,
Serafin.
um, we will now proceed with a couple of quick commentaries from Sir Raymond Leongson and myself, and
You go ahead, sir.
maybe followed by others also. Um, well, I have a couple of things that I wanted to mention regarding La Liga Filipina and its connection with Dr. Rizal's exile to the Pitan.
Yes.
The first question that comes to mind is, well, I'd like to mention that, this could not have happened. I mean, his being exiled to uh, to the Pitan had he not returned to the Philippines. Remember that he went to Europe for the second time,
Yes.
and then he wanted to come back to the Philippines, and he was warned not to go because they knew that he will be arrested.
That's
Um,
right.
yeah, uh, we have to consider the fact that during his second sojourn in Europe, Rizal actually got disillusioned with what was happening with the propaganda movement in
Very
Europe.
true. Yes, yes, yes. That's true.
And so he thought, and he said that in order to really pursue the fight, it is necessary to bring the fight home, to bring the
Mhm.
fight to the Philippines.
Yes,
So, yeah,
that's very true, Serafin.
yeah. So, so while he was still in Europe, he was already thinking of something that he has to do. And
Mm.
he tried going back to the Philippines, but he was warned not to come back. And so he decided to stay in Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it was while in Hong Kong that he more or less conceptualized and, well, he prepared actually the constitution of the La
Mm-hmm.
Liga Filipina,
Yes,
and
yes.
then send copies of it to his compatriots in the Philippines. So by the time he returned to the Philippines, Filipino leaders were already aware of it and
Mm.
were actually waiting for him. Okay. Um, now he went home in 1892.
Yes.
Okay. Why not earlier? Why not later? Is the question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think Rizal was waiting for a good opportunity, maybe a change in the Philippine situation before he could go home. And this happened when there was a new Spanish Governor General who was
Mm-hmm.
appointed, and this was Governor General Despujol,
Mm-hmm.
who was known to be liberal-minded, based on his experience, his activities while he was in Spain.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I mean, more liberal compared to his predecessor, who was Governor General Whaler.
Yes, the butcher
Yeah,
of Cuba.
yeah, the butcher. And so when this changed, the Governor Generalship changed, maybe Rizal thought that, oh, okay, this is a good time. So
Mm-hmm.
he, in fact, wrote a letter to Governor General Despujol and offered his services to him. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a copy of the letter, but yeah, that was sent to the Governor General, and so he went home, and he was encouraged by the fact that the Governor General actually met him. They actually had several meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so maybe Rizal thought that, oh, this is going well. And so he started to go out and travel to the provinces and meet with the Filipino leaders. And so, so the reason why he went home was because it was timely,
Mm-hmm.
and he felt that the governor general was more or less open-minded,
Open-minded, yeah.
yeah, and so on. But he was mistaken. Okay, he
Yes.
was mistaken. Okay, and so that brings to the next question. Um, referring to the Liga, what was really the purpose of the La Liga
Mm-hmm.
Filipina?
Mm-hmm.
It was considered by Rizal and the other Filipino leaders to be a peaceful association with
Mm-hmm.
purely civic aims. It was not revolutionary. There are people, however, and of course the Spanish government would be one, who felt, who thought otherwise. They saw it as an underground revolutionary movement.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the aims of the organization, which Gemma mentioned earlier, you can see that it is really a civic organization. However, the question arises: how can these aims be attained if the Spanish government is still there?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. And also, if you look at the organization of the La Liga Filipina, it actually it is a sort of a parallel government to the Spanish
A
colonial
shadow
government.
government.
Yeah, something like that. So people thought that it is really a revolutionary organization. And in fact, it's interesting to note that Antonio Luna later on would claim that the Katipunan is actually the La Liga Filipina.
Mm.
He mentioned, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. Um, Now, what is the connection between the La Liga Filipina and his exile? Was he exiled because the Spaniards thought that he was organizing the La Liga Filipina?
I think
Most
so.
people, I
Mm-hmm.
think most people say that that was the reason. But it's interesting to note that in the deportation order
Mm-hmm.
that was signed by Dispuhol, there was no mention of La Liga Filipina at
Mm-hmm.
all, although there were references to the meetings that he
Mm-hmm.
held with the Filipino leaders. And it also mentions that they were able uh, to find, revolutionary leaflets and other propaganda items during
Mm-hmm.
this, the houses of those who held the meetings. Uh, okay, so was it because of the La Liga Filipina? As I've
Not
said,
only that, not only because of that. Maybe
yeah,
that was like the last straw for
yeah.
the Spanish government.
Some of the things that were mentioned in the deportation order mentioned the discovery of the so-called smuggled leaflets
Uh-huh.
that Rizal actually brought with him from Hong Kong.
Mm,
And but people say that actually these were planted by the
probably.
soldiers
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
the soldiers who later arrested him, because one of the head of the soldiers actually was a relative of a bishop or something like that.
Uh-huh.
So yeah. So another reason was, of course, the fact that Noli and Fili and the
Mm-hmm.
other writings of Rizal were considered subversive by the Spanish government. And another, reason that is forwarded is personal in nature. Uh, they say that this Puhol, who has offered kindness to Rizal
Mm-hmm.
by meeting with him and even deciding or agreeing to free his relatives who
Mm-hmm.
were actually exiled at the
Exile.
time to some parts of the country. And he got mad because he thought that he was, shall we say, duped by Rizal.
Oh, that
That while
Rizal was so ungrateful.
ungrateful. Yeah, he was showing kindness to Rizal, but Rizal was going out and organizing the La Liga and so on and so forth. So these are possible reasons for his exile. So it's not only the La Liga
Uh-huh.
that was
Yeah.
the reason
Yeah.
behind it. And of course, the church itself was really anti-Rizal, and
Yes.
they
From the
tried to
very
move
beginning.
they
Mm-mm.
tried to move heaven and hell just to to find something wrong, uh, find something against him. So anyway, those are just my comments, and
Well,
you're
thank you
welcome
very
to.
much. Thank you very
Yeah,
much, Serafin, because I'm glad you brought up that point about his why he came back to the Philippines, because I think he had like a dispute with Marcelo del Pilar, because Marcelo del
mhm,
Pilar firmly believed that the problem with the Philippines is the soberania monacal, no, the
mhm,
phylocracy that was ruling in the Philippines. And Rizal, it dawned on Rizal that it's not only the friars, it's the colonial system itself that is doing the Philippines a lot of harm, no? And so they were
mhm.
arguing about that. So that was when Rizal said, if the Philippines is like a sick man, then
Yeah,
the battle is not here in Madrid. We should go back to the Philippines and bring the medicine to the sick man. No? That's what I
mhm,
think they were arguing about. So that's when he left. And that's when he probably received this letter from Seferino de Leon saying that things were no longer the same when he left, that the Filipinos became disunited. No? And then, about the La Liga Filipina, I was really wondering. He was already, exiled in Dapitan, isolated, but then there were still the Cuerpos de Vigilancia following people who were associated with him, as if the Liga Filipina was still alive and very active in Manila. And I'm sure you came across the book of this British historian, Light of Liberty, Mr. Richardson. He was able to research in the archives of the military archives in Spain, and he discovered some documents that still unknown to us. And according to him, that Bonifacio was already forming the Katipunan if the La Liga was inaugurated in July, that early in January of the same year, Bonifacio was already like meeting and forming the Katipunan. And the goals were very similar. And that was probably why he was attracted to the La Liga Filipina, and he went to the inauguration and signed up for it. No, that was according to Mr. Richardson in his book, Light of Liberty. And another fascinating point that Dr. Kibuyan always brings up, he said when he unravels cobwebs, he said, he mentioned well-known Filipino historians now dead, like Teodoro Agoncillo.
Just a commentary making some parallels between events that describe Mindanao in the 1890s are still true today with respect to punishing people with criminal, activities. Anyway, I, I thought that the main purpose of the Spanish government to exile Rizal to Dapitan was to break his spirit, uh,
I
put
think so.
put him in isolation,
Mm-hmm.
and expose him to dangers of all magnitude. That was the belief at the time in the 1890s about what Mindanao was. It was basically a terra incognita. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
um, I was surprised to see that today, more than 120 years later, some leaders of the Philippines still think that way, you know.
That's right. I
Yes, they
agree with
think
you.
that way.
Mm-hmm.
That Mindanao is still a terra incognita, a dangerous
Yeah,
region, and a
a place
place
to
where people,
punish people.
yeah, where a place where people should be punished. And
Yes.
I was surprised to encounter one statement made by no less than President Rodrigo Duterte in 2017, who warned more than 200 policemen, many of whom were accused of minor crimes like cohorting with drug lords, you know, or distributing drugs themselves, or selling drugs, things like that. And he warned them. This is documented by Rappler itself, and he was quoted, "Putang na nyo, i-deport ko kayo sa Basilan. Doon kayo magloko-loko. 2 taon ko kayong ilalagay doon." Something like that. Okay.
Yes. Can you imagine? Can you imagine that mentality still
Yeah.
exists today?
And I'm really surprised. He's not the only one, of course. There were other
Mm-hmm.
presidents who treated errant, civil service
Mm-hmm.
people, especially in the military and the police. You know, even
Yeah.
the military. Many people were actually stationed in Mindanao, some in Maguindanao, others in
Mhm.
Sulu. You know, a sort of punishment to make
That's
them
right. That's
reform.
right. That's right.
I think that perception of Mindanao being a dangerous place
Mm-hmm.
is kind of common, uh, even among many officials
Mm-hmm.
who are not in the government but in corporations or private
Mm-hmm.
businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I know for a fact, just one example that I have experienced myself, the Philippine Fulbright Commission,
Mm-hmm.
which is I think, a semi-government organization, who still believes in the same way that the Spaniards thought 120 years ago. I had a project to be implemented in Mindanao next year
Uh-huh.
under Fulbright, to bring 1 dozen American teachers for
Uh-huh.
training in Iligan City.
Oh.
And knowing that the venue of my training for American teachers under Fulbright program will be in Mindanao,
Mm-hmm.
he opposed the idea that we should
Oh,
go there.
really? Oh
Yes,
my.
he opposed the idea,
Oh.
and he recommended to Fulbright Washington
Mm-hmm.
to change the venue outside
Oh.
of Mindanao, because Mindanao is considered risky for Americans.
Ah. Well,
Um, I
maybe
even
it is.
proposed. Yes, that's true. It happened. So next year we will not go to Iligan anymore for the training, but
Ah.
we have decided, based on the advice of Fulbright Washington,
Mm-hmm.
to hold it in another place outside of Mindanao. I even proposed we can do it in Cagayan de Oro, or even
Yeah,
in,
exactly.
even in Davao City, where the
Yes.
vice president is,
Well, of course, of
a
course.
resident. But
Yeah, right.
Fulbright did not listen to that suggestion, and stuck to the idea, okay, any place, so long as it's not Mindanao. So I think these kinds of perceptions should be
Mm-hmm.
corrected, because Mindanao is now generalized as a dangerous country, a
Yeah.
terra incognita, a place
Mm-hmm.
for punishment of people, a place where people could be harmed, and things like that. I think that kind of perception should be changed. And
Yes, yes. I think you are right, Fred, because that is a very colonial idea of Mindanao, no? And there is a movement among historians of decolonization.
uh,
Because, well, as Floro Kibuyan says, even Teodoro Agoncillo and Renato Constantino Vivencio Jose, all history professors of the University of the Philippines, he says that they had a American colonial education, which deeply affected their appreciation of Rizal and the Philippine Revolution. So I guess we really have to take very seriously this matter of decolonizing our idea of history, no, or our idea of ourselves, no. So we will have to stop thinking that, for example, that Mindanao is still a dangerous place like it was during the time of Rizal. That's
Okay.
now
Yeah.
that Sara Duterte is the Secretary of Education. She should do something about that. No, because she's from Davao.
She proposed a very big Intel fund for the Department of Education.
Yes,
And
so
Intelligence. For
imagine
intelligence.
it has the biggest budget. So I
yeah,
think maybe the Knights of Rizal should suggest to her a decolonization of our education, because we can't go on living thinking that Mindanao is a dangerous area, no? So that will not be good for our efforts to unify the country and the Filipino people.
Yeah. Okay,
Mhm.
Sir Raymond.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you again, Gemma, for that very, very informative lecture or
Thank you. Thank you so
sharing of
much.
ideas. It's really a lecture, actually. Yeah. And it's interesting that the three gentlemen we have right now here all have connections with Mindanao, you
Yes.
know. And while in my case, while I was born in Manila, I grew up in Ilocos Norte, right?
Mhm.
And now here, the thing here is that it's not just a matter of where one can be banished or exiled. I'm not trying to give the LBM, the BM. I'm not trying to make a suggestion of BBM using like northern islands as well, like Fuga or Batanes. As like, they could use that as well, right? The point of banishment, the point of separation, really to destroy, to break down a person's spirit, just like what June was telling us earlier, or yeah, as a possible reason for the banishment or the exile of Rizal is really very, you know, can really break a person. It's even in religion they use that. I mean,
Yeah.
excommunication, right?
Ah,
So the
right, right.
separation of the person. So regardless of where you throw that person, boom. Um, as to the as to the uh, question and whether La Liga was simply a civic organization or a revolutionary organization, I I thought of it as both. You know, you look at the motto, "Unos instar omnium," right? One equal to all,
Mhm.
meaning even one Spanish equal to all Filipinos, or one Filipino equal to everyone else. That is a social justice already assertion. That, especially during that time, is a revolutionary idea and remains to be a revolutionary idea. Not only in the Philippines, but everywhere else, even here in the United States. The issues of the Black Lives Matter, that's why we have all these, right? So that's one. Another one is, you know, just like what Manong, Manong Fred was saying, it's like those things that have been happening in the 1800 during Rizal's time, they continue to happen again. It's almost like a deja vu,
Yeah.
repeated deja vu, right? So did Rizal come back because he felt like it was safer to come back? Or was it because he shared the same thinking or feeling as just like one man who said, I am going back because the Filipinos are worth dying for.
Mhm.
And these two men went back and
Yeah.
both ended up with a bullet
Yep.
in their bodies. Yeah.
That's right.
And yeah, and another thing too was La Liga the cause of his banishment too, you know? Or was it for other reasons? To me, we cannot separate La Liga from all other works of Rizal. We
Mhm.
cannot separate La Liga Filipina from Noli Me Tangere, from
Mhm.
El Filibusterismo, from his artwork. I'm always fascinated with that, the revenge work.
Yeah.
Nung pinatay nung, yeah, gumanti yung aso dun sa buhaya, right?
Oo.
When the mother dog took vengeance, and so these are revolutionary, these are
Mhm.
revolutionary
Idea.
uh,
Yeah.
ideas already, and
Mhm.
suggestive of like what can happen, when something goes wrong. Even I argued in one lecture previously that many of the thoughts really advanced by Rizal, especially through El Filibusterismo, were truly very revolutionary. Yeah.
Mhm.
So those are a few points, and there are probably some of us who want to continue sharing ideas, but um, like I really see the that Unos Instar Omnium as the central ethos of La Liga Filipina. It could be the hidden, well, not probably exactly, but it is almost like a subtle revolutionary mission there, and then he had all this written like
Mhm.
civic purposes
Yeah.
for the organization, but underneath it there is the social justice, right? There's this, it's almost like saying Filipinos lives matter even as early as that.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Raymond. But I think in those days, in the 19th century, the goals of La Liga Filipina were already quite revolutionary. Revolutionary, without taking up arms, because being revolutionary does not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily mean that you take up arms, no?
Mm-hmm.
Because your ideas can be just as dangerous
As revolution.
as
Mm-hmm.
your weapons. So when he promoted, imagine unifying the archipelago into one nation. So during the colonial days, that was very suspicious, like, what do you mean one nation? And to teach Filipinos how to help themselves in times of emergency, and to promote education,
Mm-hmm.
agriculture. Well,
Mm-hmm.
we have not even promoted agriculture. We have completely, di ba?
tell that
Diba,
to the
no?
tell that to the
Tell that
current
to the president.
secretary of agriculture.
Yes, imagine. We have not even, that was what, more than 150 years ago. And it was considered revolutionary then. And it's would probably be considered revolutionary now. Will probably be red tagged if you started helping farmers out there in the bundoks. Di ba?
Definitely.
Well, anyway, as I was mentioning earlier about these three historians that Floro Kibuyen mentioned, Constantino Agoncillo and Vivencio Jose, Dr. Kibuyen said that they were using Marxist methodology to analyze our Philippine Revolution. And he feels that that was not really the correct methodology to do it. No, because he was like forcing the issue of class struggle. It has to be class struggle. But according to this, the Jim Richardson of his book Life, The Light of Liberty, the Katipunan did not have any socialist ideas at all. And they did not even advocate the distribution of land, according to this British historian. So please give me this opportunity to remind you that I have a book.
Wow.
Oh yeah,
Is that
Rizal's True Love. That's what you wrote.
Well, this is a collection of all my articles, all my
Uh-huh.
articles,
wow.
especially
And
the
his
ones
and his
about
his his true love is the Philippines.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. The
So
Gem.
sometimes my friends say, "O sino yung true love?" Aba, di basahin mo yung libro ko.
Gemma, I
Yeah,
have a copy of Lolo Jose.
by
What was
Sonny
your
Bantug,
involvement with that again?
by Sonny Bantug.
Oh, yeah, yeah, okay.
Tita
But you
Sonny.
were involved with the production of that book, right?
I think Bibal Press reprinted it.
Uh,
Mm-mm.
I happen to have a copy of that.
Yes, that's very good because Floro Kibuyen also has very fond memories of my Tita Sonny Bantug, no? Because he loves to tell this story, si Floro. When he was a 20-year-old student of history in the UP, I suppose, and he was already researching on Rizal, I think he happened to meet Tita Sonny in maybe a lecture, no? And
Mm-hmm.
when Tita Sonny saw that he was this young man who was very interested in Rizal, she said, "Oh, why don't you come to our house for Noche Buena, some Christmas celebration?" And Floro was very excited and he said, "Yes, thank you very much. I'll go." So he went. He went to the dinner in the house of the Bantugs. And among the guests was Austin Craig.
Wow.
Buhay pa siya, buhay pa siya. Pero
Wow.
sabi ni Floro, si Austin Craig raw was so bastos to him. Sabi, siguro medyo nakainom na. So, when we were talking about whether Rizal was wanted to be assimilated to Spain or not, they were just discussing it with Tita Sonny and her husband, Mr. Bantug. And then suddenly, this Austin Craig daw said, stupid idea. Yung mga ganon. Whatever Flora was saying, oh, what a ridiculous idea. Stupid idea. Ganon. So, of course, 20 years old lang si Floro, no? So, quiet na siya. So, si Tita Sonny, to ease out the situation, Tita Sonny turned to her husband and said, Pops, this Floro is so young and is so interested in researching about Lolo Jose. Why don't we make him a part of our family?
Mm,
Parang sinasabi niya kay Austin Craig, Oy, ang bastos mo. Di ba?
mhm,
Here's this
mhm,
young man who's trying to study and research about Rizal. You should encourage him instead of, being so rude. So yun lang sinabi.
mhm,
Sabi niya, wow, your Tita Sonia talaga. What a refined lady. That was what she said. I'll never forget that. Sabi ko, yeah, ganun talaga si Tita Sonny. She was a very refined, educated lady, a very kind person. And imagine, Floro was her guest in their house. Tapos, babastusin siya ng isang foreign guest. Siyempre, ayaw ni Tita Sonia.
mhm,
So, yung one,
mhm.
Floro's
Yeah.
unforgettable stories.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
gentlemen, thank you very much for this opportunity. It was a pleasure to be discussing these very relevant issues about Jose
Mhm,
Rizal and his
mhm.
connection to the present with
Yeah.
Knights of Rizal like you.
Yeah.
So let's keep up the good work to promote the works of Rizal. And my worry now in my generation is that we have to pass the torch to the younger generation.
Mhm.
Like Tita
Yeah.
Sony and to pass the torch to my generation about Jose Rizal. Now we have to pass it on to our
Continue.
nieces and
Yeah.
nephews and grandchildren.
Mhm.
So,
Well, this lecture, Gemma, has been recorded, and with your permission, we will share it and continue to share it. Also, we would appreciate if you can send us through Sergeant Colmenares a copy of what you shared us. And also, with your permission, we would like to include that in anthology that we continuously produce here in Hawaii,
all right.
if that's okay
Okay,
with
I'll
you.
do that. Yes, yes, of course.
Yeah.
It will be an
I'll
Thank you
keep
honor.
in
so
touch.
much.
I'll keep in touch with you, Gemma, on that.
All right. Okay. So thank you very much. And
Yeah,
Well,
marami pong salamat. And again, uh, please stay healthy, and
thank
we look
you.
forward to continuously having you in our virtual lectures, even as a reactor or just
Yes, of
plain
course. Of
attendee
course.
and a resource person like we had you this evening.
All right. Thank you very much. May you have a pleasant afternoon or evening.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
thank you. See you
Thank you,
soon.
Gemma. And I'll get in touch. I'll keep in touch.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.